All right. Hello, welcome this evening. Appreciate you all being here. My name is Matt Outlaw, I'm superintendent for the Brighton area schools, and I'm going to go right across our table here, introduce all of our table guests. We have Board Trustee Andy Storm, Board Trustee Alicia Urbane, Board Trustee Dr. Angela Krebs. We have our Board Treasurer Katie Tierney. We have our Board Secretary Ken Stahl, Board Vice President Jennifer Marks, our Board of Education President Roger Myers, Dave Jones, Assistant Superintendent for Finance. If you could just wave your hands so everybody knows who I'm getting to here. Next up from Baker Tilly, they are the financial advisors that do all of the financial work for bonds and things like that. We have Jesse Nelson from Baker Tilly. Next up from Kingscott, they're the architects. They do all the back-end work, the design work. This is Brendan Pollard. And from Clark Construction Company, we have two representatives here. We have the chief estimator and a project manager. We have John Rains, and we have Chad Thalen. We have other folks in the room that may be able to answer questions if we have them as well. We have our high school principal, Mr. Evans. We have our new assistant superintendent for curriculum, Mr. Satterfield. We have our human resource director, Jake Anastasoff, and we have our deputy from the Sheriff's Department, we have Mike Thompson, and then we have our Director of Technology here as well, Nick Castillo. All right, oh, and then the person who set everything up, the amazing Star Ackermite. So thank you, Star. Okay, so tonight we're going to do a couple things here this evening. The primary purpose of this part of the evening is for you to be able to ask questions of the people here that are in the audience, or on our panel. So I'm going to start off and I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of where we're at here, do a little bit of an overview of kind of where we're at with this discussion, and then I'm going to turn it over to all of you. You're going to ask questions, but what we're going to ask is there's cards in the back of the room. Fill out as many cards as you want. Just drop them in that bucket, and Star will keep bringing those questions forward, and then I'll steer it to the right person. If it's a financial question, it might be Mr. Jones or Mr. Nelson that will answer those questions, and so on and so forth. So we'll answer questions for as long as we can. 6:45, we will have a hard stop at that point, so we have a 15-minute gap before 7 o'clock when we have an official special board meeting. At that special board meeting, our board will move back to the table here, and it will be a formal meeting with an agenda, and they will take public comments at that time and whatnot, but that's the plan of attack for this evening. So let me give you a little bit of information. So since our May 2026 bond proposal, the district has done a lot of reflecting, a lot of information gathering. We've had many conversations with different groups, with different individuals. Each one of our board members has talked to countless numbers of people to gather feedback, and obviously we did a formal feedback survey. We had over 800 people that filled out that survey, and we also had a survey that was done before the last bond that helped guide us. So I'm going to walk through a couple things here quickly, and then I'll turn it back over to you. So let me see if I can get this to move forward here. So in our big survey that we had, there were 4 big areas that were identified that were concern areas, particularly for our no voters. One of the themes that came up was about November elections. People did not like the May election, and so they said, please go out in November. And many of those people said, gubernatorial election or presidential election is ideal. That would be ideal. Another common theme among the no voters was to reduce the size and the scope. It's 156 million in May. They said, can we trim that? Can we reduce that a little bit? The next thing was, can you focus more on needs? There were enhancements in it that were things that would move things forward, but some of that feedback was that we should focus on needs and needs only at this time. And then the last one, we asked feedback around different projects. What are some of the projects that resonated with the public? What are some of the ones that didn't quite resonate? And there were 3 main buckets that resonated. One was around safety, that was strongly supported. Academic spaces, projects in that area were strongly supported, and areas in the area of infrastructure replacement. Those 3 were like the buckets that most of the projects that were supported were in. So the recommendation, as our groundwork is being laid by our industry professionals and our administration here, is that we go out for a November election, whether that's 26, 27, 28, November election. Taxes was another feedback that our previous proposal had an increase in taxes. So we are recommending that the board proceed with a no tax rate increase. If we were able to do that, and I'll get to the exact chart in just a moment, we have already dropped from the 7.19 mils that we were at in the past. We've dropped all the way to 2.92 already. In December of 26, our rate is going to drop again in this community. It's going to drop all the way to 2.73. If we went out in November of 26 with a no tax rate increase, we would remain at 2.73, and I'll show you the chart in just a moment. But that's our recommendation, is to do a 2.73, stay at that rate. Do not increase tax, which would allow us at 2.73 to be able to sell bonds for up to $90,275,000. So it's a reduced scope. We also recommend focusing on safety, space, and replacement, which was loudly shared in the feedback. And then also our financial information. It can get very complicated. Mills and all these things that we have to work really hard to simplify our financial message so that we're very clear and transparent with the public. So those are just some of the recommendations that we have right out of the gate. This here, I hope you all can see that. Let me see if I can make it any bigger. Well, this is kind of how it works. See the yellow line? The black line is if we do absolutely nothing as a district, if we don't go out for any proposal. So you can see that in 2026, I got my little tiny arrow there, we dropped to 2.73. So if we went out for a no tax increase in November of 26, the projection is that you would remain at 2.73 all the way through 2032. Then it starts to drop again. So that would be the financial trajectory. Miles, did you get that? I don't want to click it out until you see it.
Yeah, I did. I was just trying to see when it would end. It's
Yeah, I can send it to you. Absolutely. So, what are some of the types of projects? I think the board, when they talk at the 7 o'clock meeting, their menu are going to be projects that were in the previous bond, and they're going to be working on keeping those projects, what comes out, what stays in. So I'm going to talk about those buckets of safety, space, and replacement. Yeah?
It's for the benefit of everybody participating in this. Do you want participants to wait until the end of this to ask questions, or would you prefer they ask questions so you don't have to come back?
I'm giving like a big picture overview, and then it's their meeting. Okay. And then you guys will answer their questions. I'm giving this just so that they know what kind of setting the context. So what are some of the safety security type questions that you have? There's only about 4 more slides here. This would include things like security lockout, security vestibule, some of the drive loops, traffic flow improvements that are there. Those are the types of things that fall in that safety security category. Some of the academic space categories, some of the ones that were in the previous bond that I think will be talked about here tonight, probably the biggest one was elementary classrooms. There would be a net increase of 2 classrooms at each one of our elementary schools, so 8 total for the district. Each building is a little bit different, but in order to accomplish this at Hilton, Spencer, and Horning, the proposal from the May bond was to add gymnasiums, and I'll show you a picture of that in just a moment. And the gymnasiums allow us to move things around, and I'll explain that just in a moment. Another signature classroom academic project is around science classrooms, high school science classrooms, one, and then the science classrooms at the middle school, particularly the casework at the middle school. Those were all things that were part of that work. Performing arts remains a prominent part of this, particularly around orchestra, the expansion of orchestra from the previous bond proposal. You've probably heard a lot about that, but orchestra started in 2017, and we don't have dedicated spaces for those. So investment in orchestra and also our high school band, and then also special education spaces. The dollar figure is included in that elementary classroom configuration, but it's sensory space, ancillary space, handicap, restroom, changing space. Those are the types of things that we had in there that were classroom academic spaces. This picture right here is a picture of the Hawkins Gymnasium. This was done in the last bond. And if you can look at this box over here on the right, the Hawkins Gyms is 100 feet by 71 feet. This is what would be proposed for Hilton, Horning, and Spencer. If you could look at the size of what we have at Hilton, Horning, and Spencer, they're much smaller and they're shared with the cafeteria. So we have minimal space here, but by creating the extra gym, it gives the space within the building for us to be able to add those 2 extra classrooms. And then the last one, what are some of the things that fall in that replacement category? And there's more things that are on here. A lot of these were driven by a Plant Moran study that was done across the state. That's where a lot of these came from. Our facility committee has been talking about these projects for some time. But technology is a piece of it, roof replacements, bleachers, cooling towers, on and on, bus lot, mill and cap. There's a number of things that they'll talk about, particularly at the 7 o'clock meeting around replacement. Finally, the timeline on it. The board tonight at 7 o'clock is going to deliberate. And they're going to talk about timeline. If they're looking at November of 26, they're going to need to determine, do you go forward with a no tax increase? If that's the case, then what projects would be included in a $90,275,000 bond proposal? That's the plan here for this evening. November, they would have to have the ballot approved by 4 o'clock p.m. on August 11th. So we have a board meeting scheduled for August 10th. So if we're proceeding with November 26th, the scope needs to be pretty much determined this evening, but by the end of this week, so that their preparations can be done by construction, legal, and all the other paperwork in order to be prepared for August 10th. And election day is November 3rd. If the board chooses to not proceed with November of 26, and this is a conversation for another day, so we don't have to go through all the projects. So with that, appreciate you humoring me with that. I just wanted to give you kind of an update on where we're at today. So going back to the very beginning, I think these recommendations, November election, no tax rate increase, reducing the size, and focusing primarily on safety, space, and replacement. So thank you, I appreciate that. And now let's get into some questions.
Can I ask one just clarifying question on the slides, if you don't mind pulling it up?
Okay, just go ahead and ask.
Well, it's important that you have the...
All right, it'll take a minute then, because I just logged out.
That's why I asked earlier. I didn't want to interrupt you.
We're going to have them right here on these cards, and then we will go from there. So, no, great.
Will we be able to ask questions about the cards?
We could start with the cards, would be appreciated.
I have a lot of questions. You got a couple boxes?
Okay. All right, what can I do for you?
If you go to that mill slide, right here.
Yep.
Just want to make sure I understand this correct. So we're in 2026 right here?
Yep.
Right? So in the last special election, there was a lot of conversation we had as a board around misinformation related to tax increases. And I just want to make sure that I'm interpreting this correctly. If the board does not move forward with the bond,
Yep.
and the community does not do anything further than what they've already done, the tax rate for citizens will go down.
Correct.
Below this yellow line.
Correct.
So their
That's exactly
taxes would actually be reduced
correct.
if what is proposed
Yeah, if
on your slides wasn't
Correct.
acted upon.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure
Yeah,
that that's
absolutely. And
clear
that's the decision for the public.
communicated.
But that's what it says zero, it's not a tax reduction.
Well,
they're
it-
voting
ta-
to
the-
keep the rate.
Taxes will go down if the bond on
Correct.
this yellow line isn't ultimately approved by the public.
Correct.
Okay.
The only thing to add to that chart is the, like you said, those 292, 25, 273 are set in stone or actual. The black line is estimated because every year, Dave, new tax values have to be calculated out. So the 262 they're on is thereafter. Yes.
This year in 27,
Correct.
255 and
Yeah.
29.
Right, so it is estimated to go down, but by how much, that's an estimate.
But it is projected to go down.
Correct.
That's the latest estimate, but I don't want people saying, well, it's gonna be that exact figure where tax values go higher.
So technically, to go from this rate or this rate to that yellow line, your taxes go up.
Well, if you pass it, stays at 273, but if you don't, that's the fact.
Yep, and to go from that line to the yellow line, then technically your taxes would go up, correct?
No,
If the bond was passed
Yeah.
in November, and if we assume two scenarios, right? Scenario one is the bond does not pass in November, and this is the hypothetical line that everyone's taxes would follow, right? If it was passed, to get from this line to that line, a person's property taxes would go up. They'd be paying more in property taxes than they would in this scenario, correct?
So,
No?
hold on. Yellow line is if it
I
passes.
understand.
Black line is if it doesn't.
Yes.
So you wouldn't have a scenario where it goes from 240 to 270.
I'm just saying, to clarify, this is an increase. To go from this line to this line is an increase. Yes?
There's only two possible scenarios, the yellow and the black. So there wouldn't be a scenario where you're suddenly at 240.
I'm in agreement with you on that. What I'm saying is, in the spirit of informing the public,
If the bond proposal doesn't pass, taxes go down.
Thank you.
And that's
Thank
what you
you.
asked and gave you a yes.
thank you.
You've got it, no
That's
problem.
all I'm seeking.
No.
The air is clear.
Yep,
Thank you.
perfect, okay. Any questions from here before I turn this over to cards? Okay. Now, I'm gonna actually leave that up here. All right, Star, I'm gonna come get some cards from you here. All right. So I would like the band room projects to be determined, okay, say it. Yeah. Okay, yeah, okay. I would like the band room projects to be deemed a safety issue as the current room is causing hearing damage. So whichever category, we could probably, I would just say that many of these projects could be in multiple buckets, where it's a replacement, but it also helps students academically, and it may also be a safety thing. So it is definitely in the proposal. So thank you. Yeah, that's one. So what is the cash amount needed for security? All in the priority of each August 11th. So how much is the need for each one of the security projects? Sure. Let me go back on that. So if you see here, these are samples of ones that are that were in the proposal from before. A secure lockout system is estimated at just over $1.6 million. A secure vestibule, which is how people enter the school. I think many folks here know what that secure vestibule is. But at Porting and at Spencer, it's identified by our security consultant. That's something that needed to be addressed. Secure vestibules at Porting, the estimate was just over $2 million, as you can see. Spencer's was a little bit different configuration. There's a little bit less at 1.8 million. The Horning Drive, there's about $8 million that's set aside in this. Am I right on about $8 million? About $8 million set aside. Part of that is road, part of it is redesign, but it's also the potential for having to move a field or two depending on the final design. We are still waiting for the final result from a traffic study. Am I missing anything else in that?
There was some playground rework that may be needed in that,
And then the drive-throughs, there's an extension at Hilton. Anybody who's been at Hilton or at Spencer, it's creating more off-the-road space for cars to be able to get off Hilton Road and then Spencer Road at Spencer. So those are some samples of safety projects.
Well, the security side, which is the
first two.
So the first one was that total.
No, the first two buckets there, I mean, you're at 5.6, is that right? About 5.6 million?
So that was all in cost
Of,
of essentially
of these, of these savings.
we decided to flat. So more raise for Washington, especially if you decide, right?
So there's no other security for any of the other schools other than the lockout system?
Blackout system and the secure vestibules are the two main that are specific to security.
Okay, well, the 6 million out of the 100, or the 90 million we're discussing, there's no other security for any other schools other than the lockout system.
Blackout system and secure vestibules are the two things that fall in the bucket of security. That's it. Am I missing anything? Yeah.
I think it's important to mention that the other buildings have vestibules, you guys know that. However, they don't have this, they do not have the district-wide security lockout system. That's a new system, it's one where they have a badge and they can activate it, keep you in the building. So, yes, we only need 2 more vestibules at this point, and then the other system would be, that would go.
How do they get in and out without lockout system? Right now,
So right now, if they want to get in, they have to buzz the door.
that's security.
That is security, however, it's not, the problem with those two buildings is the corridor in which we deemed it a secure vestibule is not completely secure. Kids come through there to go to gym or lunch or things like that. Ideally, to move it forward and get them away from it.
Okay, next question here. How, I'm going to ask this one to Mr. Nelson from Baker Tilly. How does the millage rate drop from 2.92 to 2.73? Can you explain that? Let's get you that microphone up.
Yes, each year the bond millage rate is recalculated based upon the new property values and the new bond payments. The new taxable values, new property values were received May from Livingston County. And at that time, working with Mr. Jones, we took a look at the annual payment and the property values went up about 5%. So the old millage rate of 292 is no longer necessary to make the annual bond payment, so it was reduced to 2.73 for this upcoming 71.6 tax bill. And then that would be consistent with what you saw on the black line going forward, as the millage rate would be recalculated each year, and as the things move down, we don't pass the bonds for the existing bonds.
Okay. The next one. Are there additional educational projects for the high school? So let me go back to that slide real quickly. So the primary high school, the biggest project at the high school level really is the science. Science is number one, and then performing arts. Those are the two biggest areas for the high school when it comes to educational projects. Board members, or anybody else, am I missing any other for the high school? I think those are the primary buckets for the high school level. Okay. All right, these guys are stuck here. There we go. So what is not covered in the new bond proposal, and would student achieve, sorry, I'm gonna have to look at this. And would student achievements be compromised? What is not covered in the new bond proposal, and would student achievement be compromised? So what's not covered that would help students be successful? I think that's probably maybe another way to phrase that. So there's always things that can be added. There are a number of enhancements. In bonds, district by district, there are always things that you can look at. I think for our community, I think the 2012 had many enhancements in it. I think the 2019 had many enhancements in it. This bond proposal is a little bit more focused specifically on the needs. So really, I think I think the things that are identified here, particularly the elementary classrooms, are going to be things that are going to be very beneficial, as well as the science rooms and our performing arts and special ed. I think those are areas where I think we can really deliver some results for students. So.
If I may,
Yeah, please, Roger.
But, I mean, I think to fully answer that question, I think it's important to really appreciate what the investment in the infrastructure, safety, security will do in freeing up dollars that can then be available for academic programming. And a perfect example is, you know, our state-of-the-art health occupations facility. We were able to obviously finance that through the bond, the last bond. We have a engineering program that's, I would say, second to none for public high schools. We've invested millions of dollars into that program with 3D printers, CNC machines. It really is cutting edge for high school programming. And the problem is that it's just the nature of public school funding in Michigan. It's impossible for high-achieving public schools to fund the replacement of infrastructure, to stay at the cutting edge of safety and security, to address technology within an operational budget. It's not feasible under the Michigan public school funding model. The schools that do spend their operational dollars on that type of infrastructure can afford to have some of the other cutting-edge programming that we offer our students. And so they do go hand in hand. And so obviously, and one other thing I'd like to add too that I think is one of the great benefits of living in Livingston County as well is that Livingston County doesn't have an operational millage. Legally in Michigan, the local school districts don't have the legal authority to adopt what they're called enhancement millages, but they're basically operational millages that allow districts to levy taxes for operations, including academic programming and things that couldn't be covered by a bond. Wayne County, for example, has a 1.98 enhancement millage that applies to every public school district in Wayne County, and all of those constituent public school districts then get 1 point, you know, there's administrative fees, but in essence, they get the benefit of that 1.98 enhancement millage in Wayne County that's levied through the Wayne County Intermediate School District. Oakland County, they got enhancement millage on the ballot in 2 weeks for 1.5 mils, that if it passes, then all of the public school districts will be the beneficiary of a 1.50 enhancement millage that they can use for academic programming and operational aspects of their district. Livingston County, we don't have an enhancement millage. So our funding sources are the traditional funding per pupil with the state, the property tax, and then obviously with the debt millage, the debt service millages that we have had historically, which, as Dr. Outlaw pointed out, historically have been significantly higher, as high as over 7 2 years ago. So I think you can't look at anything in a vacuum. I think it's really important that you have to look at all of these funding mechanisms, what they can be used for legally, how the access to those funds then create opportunities through other operational funding that wouldn't otherwise exist if you didn't have the ability to levy those funds for infrastructure improvement. So that goes to one of the points that Dr. Walla made about the educational piece about public school funding. I think it's really important to understand how all of these work together because they are vitally important, that they do work together and that we leverage to the best that we can those funding resources, but do so in a financially responsible manner so that we provide the best return on investment. Because that's what it's really all about. And we can still leverage a lower millage rate, have the funds that we need to make the investment, and provide the maximum return on investment. So I just think it's really important for everyone to understand that overall.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was the chairman of proposal A. I know how it works.
Yeah, every district gets 18 mils.
What's
That's
that?
what it is. Every district gets 18 mils. That's part of the,
Only if the public votes for it.
okay.
You don't have to pay.
The two primary sources of funding in the state of Michigan for operational purposes is the per pupil funding from the state and the 18 mils that are levied
But
locally.
these mills are not just for the school district, it's for the community also. Example, Selkirk. In some other districts, it's a district library. Ours are done through the city of Brighton and the municipality. There's a lot of different things that 18 mills are used for. Recreation, swimming pools, Little League baseball. That was all rolled in to those 18 mills if you wanted.
Well, the 18 mils, again, the point I made was that is basically one of the two basic funding sources for all school districts in the state of Michigan, in addition to the
They want.
funding, right? Those are the two primary. Those funding mechanisms, you go to every district in the state, that is not a sufficient funding mechanism in order to maintain facility infrastructure, investments in security, safety and security, and at the same time provide the funding to invest in the cutting edge programming. I mean, it's proven. I mean, you can look at any district around
You're
the state.
partly right in the fact that, yeah, if you give 5% increases, yeah, you're not gonna make it, but you're gonna take away from the budget. And then you can't afford to do that. Then you gotta go into the 18 mills, add on to that, and then you're gonna run out of that. It's the old saying, you know, you drive a Chevy, you want a Cadillac, and then you want a Jaguar. Well, you don't have the money, what are you gonna do?
So let me jump into the next question here. The next question is, how confident, and I'm going to steer this to President Myers here, how confident is the board that this lower bond proposal would keep Brighton's historically high educational standards?
Well, I kind of answered it to some extent just a minute ago. I mean, and to go back, 15 years ago, Brighton was in a very precarious financial situation on the verge of an emergency manager being appointed. And at that time, the millage rate was 7, we had a chart previously, but it was
So for Brighton, it would be, if we lost our 18 mills non-homestead, it would be a $10 million reduction in our operating costs across the district. Also, what another unique thing about Brighton is that we don't have any community parks and rec villages. How
we do.
Excuse me, the city of Brighton does not have, the city of Brighton, Brighton Township, Genoa, does not have a parks and rec village.
Yes, they do.
But school districts around the state, Saline being one of them, Jackson, Novi, have recreational villages that the school can levy to do the recreational facility. Where in Brighton, we are the community. There is no baseball field that's open to the public. It's not in a school.
It is.
Okay, excuse me. This is, if you have a question, please write it down.
Well, I've talked to you before, and you know that's not true.
Mike, so the city of Brighton, Brighton Township, you know what, they do have self-rep, but that is not a recreation village that is voted on by the voters. So the point is that other districts like Novi, Saline, I know Saline's been mentioned in the community that we should do some things like Saline. Saline does have a Parks and Rec village, and it's going up for renewal on this next ballot. These are things that we don't currently have in Brighton, that if, you know, we take care of all of the community recreation needs in Brighton. There's no baseball fields, there's no soccer fields, there's no lacrosse fields, there's no tennis courts that are publicly available that are not at the school.
Did we let him respond? It's a workshop.
I was,
We have to invite the public here, we're not gonna let them respond?
I
always have a card.
had 19 years
He
on the
commented, and
school
he wants
board.
to respond, are we allowing the public to respond to us, or are we gonna shut him down?
No, we're not shutting down.
Okay.
Yes,
Why don't we just, okay, Amy, let's have some fun here, okay?
Absolutely.
We don't need him interrupting.
I'm in full I'm
People
full.
are answering questions.
I simply
You
said-
weren't interrupting while people were answering questions. So let him
Say
answer,
that again?
let him, if he wants to talk, that's fine, we can have follow-up questions.
I'm not opposed to having the forum in the meeting. I'm simply stating, he's a member of the public. He deserves to respond to the comment that a board member made.
But we have people that submitted cards ahead
Correct.
of
So
him,
as soon as he responds to your comment, then we'll go to the next card. He deserves a chance to respond. Go ahead, sir.
First of all, I'll give you, my name's Miles View. Spent 19 years on the school board, 35 years outside the school board. I'm very active in the community. I was on the South board, first one. I was in high school at the time. And I was on it for Reno Township. Then I was on it for the Brighton School District. Selkra was voted on by the public for recreation, for the after school, the high school that they have. Bridge.
Bart.
Those were the things that were voted on by the public, and it rolled into the 18 mills when the proposed light passed. And that's the way it's been.
The city
Yeah.
withdrew from Sulphur in
The
2015.
city can withdraw all they want. That doesn't mean a thing. It was controlled by an organization set up by the state of Michigan, and we voted on it as taxpayers, not just from the city of Brighton, not just from the school district, but the taxpayers of this school district and all 5 municipalities. We passed bonds to put in baseball fields for the school and the South. And I'm saying South. We put in other things for the community to use. An example, the weight room. That weight room, I'm the one that talked with other board members into putting that in funding it. And what happens, the public gets to use it 3 hours a day. Howard thing was some of the board members we had, or they don't understand. I don't know which it is. And all I'm trying to do is give you the information. I've forgotten more than most of you know.
Okay. All right, I'm going to go with the next question here. So the introduction is happy to see orchestra, band, and the band shell in the preliminary plans. The BCPA seating needs attention. Seats cannot be individually replaced, and repairs are difficult. Backstage also needs attention and investment. If not addressed, this is a question for the board here, if not addressed in this bond, how are these needs going to be addressed? So start with President Meyer, and then you could steer it to whoever you would like.
Well, I would say that to the extent that any particular project is not included as part of a bond proposal, that, I mean, at some point, there are capital improvements that we do budget for on an annual basis. It's obviously significantly smaller scope that we can budget for as part of our annual operating budget. It's certainly nowhere near the scope of, and would be able to subsidize the scope of what we would be putting on a bond. So obviously, there are projects that were in the May bond that just are not going to be included, obviously, because this is going to be a much smaller proposal if it ultimately does get adopted and be presented to the voters. At that point, we will, depending on then the outcome of the November election, we as a board would have to decide how we prioritize whatever capital funding we can budget on an annualized basis to be able to further address the projects.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So next, quick follow-up.
And it's probably more for Dave, but we're on the board, we love it, what was it, $1 or $2? Was it $1 or $2 in charge?
I don't know the amount, but every year there is, there are amounts for the
And can you share what that number is? Because I think it's about 20 years additional before we would be able to have enough to replace.
by some strange coincidence, I'm looking at it right now. There's $144,000 sitting on our capital project fund. It is an accumulation of, I forget how many years of.
And that's strictly for the BCP.
That is correct.
Correct.
Yes,
They're seated right now
yes.
for BCP.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. It's about,
$1 per seat. But as it grows, it also gets more expensive. So it's been going for, I believe, 8 to 10 years.
yes.
So, like you were saying, 20 years probably before it's actually fundable, before it can.
At the current price, not, right.
Right, so I mean, it'll never get there, right? So it's the fact that the BCPA, the public has been investing in this for 8 to 10 years, I can't remember, for the new seats that have been a need for that amount of time. So we don't fill in that gap now, the gap just keeps getting bigger. Like, that's not enough to keep pace with it.
And the seats are, BCPA was open in 1994, so they're 32 years old at this point. So just putting that out there. The next one here, security-wise, will there be any gaps at any of our schools? With this proposal, we're addressing two of the biggest areas that were identified by our security consultants. Deputy Thompson was part of that process, Deputy Bell, Mr. Eccles. They're constantly looking for new improvements. They're looking for any gaps that do exist. The reality is that it's a moving target, that we're always improving, constantly. We're never going to be flat-footed. Deputy Thompson, am I correct in that? That our law enforcement department, our partners are always looking for new ways to improve safety. So I don't think we've not arrived at the station, but we always have to be looking forward. So, thank you. Next up, how much would, and I'm going to refer this to Mr. Nelson, How much would 1 mil sinking fund bring in per year, no interest?
Roughly about 3 million.
So
3.5,
3 to 3.5 million. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll run that math through again, but there are 2 points bringing 10 million, so it could be a lot higher. I'd like to see the math.
Right. If your taxable value is, let's say, the 3.6 billion, it would be about 306.
On that, so
We got it, 1 million.
it'd be significant dollars because it's a large tax.
3 to 3.5 million, I think that's,
Or higher.
okay. Next one, are you considering any changes at Scranton that would change the Lee Road entrance or impact traffic there? Any removal of trees in the small wooded area there? So in this proposal, there is nothing specific to the Scranton Road. There's no parking lot that's in the proposal that would be talked about at 7 o'clock. But the reality is and I mentioned this when we were talking before, that if the Maltby Road is included in that configuration, if we have to move any of the Maltby fields over to Scranton, there could be some changes. I'm not 100% sure of the design. Our Clark partners, do you remember, was there any, I'm talking about the trees. Were there trees that needed to be removed if a field had to be moved into that area?
There was discussion of that, yes. Really taking over some of that tree property that had additional fields and parking over there off of the road. It wasn't going to be an entrance.
I would say that it's important. I think a priority that I just have heard, and I don't mean to speak for anyone, is that preserving green space in our trees is important in this, and we do not want to be disrespectful in any way with that. We do recognize the importance of the trees and the green space and everything for our residents. Some of that is to be determined, though. So I'm just being honest about that. About the field movement, that would be the real question mark if that Maltby Road is in place. We're trying to make it as minimal as possible. Sorry.
Did you say also a parking lot that also Lee Road?
Yes.
Also,
Yes.
is that being considered?
Yes. Yeah, for providing improved access to the football field.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's one of, I don't know if this touches upon the actual entrance to the property of Lee Road, but I think it's important for the public to understand that when that bus, that loop road that comes in off of Lee Road was constructed from the last bond, one of the things that we're looking at was the scope of what that access could provide. And the road commission, if it was going to be a full ingress, egress point of access to the Maltby campus from the north off of Lee Road, the road commission was going to require a significant amount of, well, there was going to be engineering work, there was going to be the need to construct turn lanes, acceleration, deceleration lanes going east and west off of on Lee Road. It was going to increase the scope of the project by millions of dollars. And so ultimately, the decision was made at that point that because it was going to represent a very significant benefit from a traffic circulation standpoint, getting the buses in from the north, from a safety standpoint, having a secondary means of access to the Maltby campus, we went forward with that project with its current configuration, which is gated for bus access only. So the only way that could change, and obviously with the improvements that were constructed at Maltby coming on the actual Maltby campus, it's significantly improved the on-site circulation. But the idea of reconstructing the actual drive entrance off of Lee Road to provide full ingress and egress for all traffic, buses, vehicles, that's something that is not going to be taken into consideration as part of this bond proposal. And that's been mentioned, one of the significant aspects that we are looking at is the Maltby Morning campus, because that still represents a much greater safety
I think one of the most pressing needs, and I've brought this up publicly at our board meetings, is the opportunity for handicapped visitors to have access to watch their children, grandchildren, loved ones play. And there's very, very significant safety issues that occur in the current state where young children are walking from the playing fields to the parking lots near the school. And adults, lots of them are driving vehicles up and down that road, even though there's signage. So we've had conversations in prior meetings around how we can improve that for the benefit of those individuals who need access, legitimately need the access. But there's been some challenges that the administration has faced with regards to figuring out how to do that within the bounds of the law. So that's something that I'm hopeful that the district and the administration can resolve with the state and the county to come up with a solution that doesn't require us to put in an expensive parking lot, do a complete re-engineer of that particular road.
I also want to comment on that. As a resident who also lives in that neighborhood, I personally think that the drop-off pickup of cars off of Lee Road in that neighborhood is a safety issue. We saw a problem in Hawkins earlier this year, and the amount of kids that are crossing in that aspect and cars dropping off with no safe place to pull off in a parking lot is a safety issue. And so while I appreciate Mr. Myers saying that there was nothing in this bond proposal addressing it, I think that's something we will be talking about at 7 o'clock. I don't know that it's a done deal.
That's 10.8 million
On a 3 mil. It was just, it said 1 mil, yeah.
3 mills, 10.8 at 3.
If you did if you increase taxes by 3 mils is what you're saying,
10.8 million
then it would be that, okay. Okay, next question. From a student and staff perspective, are there experiences that students at Hilton, Spencer, and Horning do not have that students at Hawkins have due to the space, particularly the gymnasium? So looking at this, I pulled up this slide, I just read this a second ago. The things here that we are adding at these elementary schools, a lot of these are at Hilton, Spencer, and at Horning because they do not have that gymnasium. So Hawkins is ahead when it comes to space. They have additional space for special education students, like a sensory room. They have additional space for our ancillary staff. They have more handicap accessible areas, and on and on and on. It's a very important question that's asked, but that is where we're going. That's why the gymnasium and not having to share that space with the cafeteria, that's where that space comes from to create those 2 additional classrooms as well as those extra special education spaces. Okay. And our next question here. Does the district have information about the response rate, composition of respondents to the bond survey? What proportion were parents of children enrolled in the BAS schools? So I pulled this up. I'm going to click on this. We have 70.6% of, there was 851 people that filled out this survey. 601 of those were current BAS students, so that was 70.6%. Our next biggest group were former BAS students, that was 15.6%. Our next largest group were taxpayers. Nope, that's not it. Here we go. It's like small pots. Here it is. Non-parent of former or future students, that was 4.1%, and then small pieces after there for the other groups. So it was predominantly current and former parents of the Brighton area schools that filled out that survey. Next question here. What BAS programs have been cut to date for 2026-27? So there have not been any program reductions that were part of our budget this year. Mr. Jones, am I missing anything on that? Obviously, there's always efficiencies with our staffing and whatnot, but we did not cut any programs specifically. Okay. Board members, am I missing any? No? Okay.
I'd like to follow up to that because I remember during the WHMI interview, it was said that if the bond didn't pass, they were going to cut programs.
Well, that's not what it said. It said that would have to, something would be taken into consideration, and then facilities, and you're not going to finance that through a debt service bond like this, something's gonna have to give, and that might be something that'll have to be taken into
But it was
consideration.
mentioned programming specifically.
Yeah.
The bond didn't pass. It didn't say 5 or 6 years down the road. It was in discussion in regards.
We talked specifically about this as a 7-year projection for the 5 to 7 year projection for what we were going to be proposing to be funded through that bond. And it was very clear. And obviously, if, it did pass, hopefully we are able to come up with something, that might be palatable to the voters, that at some point in time, those improvements can be financed. And if so, then, there won't be other options we'll have to be looking at. It's really not simple.
All right, next question. I'm going to refer this one to Mr. Nelson as well, a popular guy. If 2.73 comes out to approximately $90 million, what bond amount does continuing at 2.92 come out to? I know you were not going to be able to do the calculations, but are you able to make an estimate?
No.
I know that's really, I know that is not in your wheelhouse, but.
The reason it's not such a simple 1 + 1 = 2 question is because even this bond proposal is being done in what they call series or stages. So this one, is being contemplated $90 million, but it's not going to do 90 million immediately. It's going to be done in 3 phases or 3 different series, and depending on the dollar amounts of the series, these amortizations put together. If you put forward a series, it makes the project larger because you have your bond payments pay off before new bonds come on. So it's not so simple as an A plus B equals, it depends on the number of the series you're putting together. A lot of districts are doing series that more time the existing debt gets paid off before new bonds come on. It's a little more effective with the interest expense, but I would have to run an analysis and get kind of a, gosh, we want 3 equal series, we want a 292 in this period, and then usually that calculates the answer to that.
But is it safe to say that if you increase taxes, you would get more than if you
Right.
went with a no tax bill?
2.92, so there'd be more funding for bond payments.
Right.
270.
How much it is,
It would
but
be higher.
it would be a higher number than what it is at a 0 tax rate increase. Okay. Okay, those are all the, is there any other cards? I think there's another card coming here.
I just have a quick question on the, if I could use the
Yeah,
microphone.
sure.
Yeah.
We had a conversation earlier regarding Livingston County and the tax rate. I think one thing to just highlight for those that have lived in Livingston County for a period of time, and this is something that I know I saw out in the community during the special election, is that Livingston County does have a very low tax rate. And I know there was some earlier comment around Oakland County and Wayne County. We've had a lot of conversations at the board table regarding students and families who are moving from Oakland County and Wayne County to Livingston County because of the low tax rate that exists here in our community. And I think the reason we have a low tax rate in our community is because the elected officials who represent the taxpayers keep our tax rates low, and we're able to, through being diligent as representatives of the taxpayer, find ways to utilize the funds we have to provide the greatest level of service to the community that we possibly can provide. And so I personally, I shared this at our last board meeting where we talked about the bond and where would we be at relative to supporting the bond, and I mentioned that I'm not personally in support of going back to the community in the fall, and I said one of the reasons why is that we clearly have to listen to the community and put thought, time, effort, and energy into being, much more detailed regarding what we bring forth if, in fact, at a future date, the board presents a bond proposal to the community. And so, as an example, and I'll speak to this later this evening, but I brought lists from 2022 that the administration had shared with the board that highlighted critical priorities for our district. This is from August 16th of 2022 from our superintendent. And the list of items that are on this list are very, very different from what's ultimately being presented to the community. I also think that costs, so the vestibules we've talked about, I don't personally believe that it costs multiple millions of dollars to provide security at the entrance of a school under any circumstance. So if you think of an airport, if any of you have traveled through an airport, there's a three-stage door that you go through if you're exiting an airport. All the major airports use them now. 3 lanes, you walk into stage 1, the door closes behind you, you go into stage 2, now you're in the middle, you go to stage 3, and then the door opens and you walk out into baggage claim. Those systems don't cost $2 million to install, and they provide an incredible level of security for our nation's airports. So I do think that we should continue to be diligent about how we spend the taxpayers' dollar.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
You're not taking into account any potential retrofit of existing structures that may necessarily be needed to take place. Like you're out walking through party, and right now, with all due respect, I hate to use this term, those students are sitting ducks if there was a bad apple. And what needs to be done to correct that situation for those students, to ensure the safety, number one goal is to retrofit that vestibule. So it's not an open scenario like an airport with a big hangar. It is a different closed type of building with holes and offices that exist there, et cetera, that are dated back to the 70s. So that is a mischaracterization of, and not an apples to oranges comparison. It is intentionally misleading and puts children at risk.
So I didn't want to interrupt you. So I guess I don't follow what you say is misleading. Airports, if you go through the stage gates leading out of the airport terminal, okay, good. Well, then you know what I'm talking about. The Evans Terminal, the North Terminal at Detroit Metro Airport. When you leave the main terminal hallway and go out to exit.
You didn't understand. You're
Sir,
choosing not to listen.
Actually, you're interrupting me. I let you finish. Back to decorum. The phase gates that you step through are secured, 100% fully secured. A person from the exterior of the airport in the ticketing area, it's physically impossible for them to walk through a 3-stage security gate to get into the terminal. Likewise, it's impossible for someone to literally walk out without going through the 3 stages of the exit gate out into the ticketing area. So I'll pause there.
Misinformation.
So what's
That is misinformation.
yeah.
Those airports have ceilings that go up probably 60 feet. And I can recite every single airport on the East Coast.
Minneapolis, what about Minneapolis? They have an 8-foot ceiling, there's a 4-shuffle door through it, it's big, bright, little dot lights through it, the door shuffles.
The point is.
I'm trying to understand, I'm legitimately trying to give you the time to explain you're saying I'm misinformed.
When was the last time you walked in the morning?
Morning?
Yeah.
2 days ago.
And that's you.
2 days ago.
Okay. You cannot equate that enclosed space with an office, with doors, with hallways to classrooms to Metropolitan Airport. That is intentionally on the record, that's intentionally misleading. And that is, when I saw that, my jaw dropped.
So what?
Saw how the enclosed space and the fact that there is, that any bad actor can get right in there and harm any child.
Sir, for $1,000, I could build a framed wall in this room in a day and put a door that's 6 feet wide by 36 inches wide.
We'll agree to disagree. I think your characterization.
We've got like 4 minutes. I mean, the fact of the matter is, we have professional consultants that are the experts in cost estimating.
Security.
So we'll let them be the experts.
So the public isn't allowed to call into question the estimates when it says
You
it's
did call
going to
into
cost
question.
$2 million?
You called into question.
Okay.
I don't
Okay.
agree with you, but that's your opinion, Andy. I mean, that's fine.
Agreed.
So we have one last question, and then we're going to wrap it up. A few minutes here if you want to mingle with any board members or any of our industry experts that are here, or any of our administrators, feel free to stay. 7 o'clock, we will have our regular board meeting will begin here. Last question. How are we reviewing our curriculum, or how our curriculum is being installed for our students? that they are, and I'm assuming that this is mentioning benefiting from the bond projects. Am I correct on that?
No, benefiting from what the community invested into our teachers, as far as how are our teachers teaching our students?
Yeah.
And how is that curriculum actually being installed into our students outside of 12th grade?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
what I'm referencing to in that aspect is going through Brighton High School, graduating in 2023, how much wasted time in each class per period. You know, we talk about investing in all these beautiful buildings, which is phenomenal, like football stadium,
Yeah.
beautiful investment. But when it comes down to like classrooms, like for instance, the Auto Tech Lab and what John Conley did in there, dumping hundreds of thousands of dollars with the school involved, getting that into such a phenomenal facility and it not being used to the highest potential possible, sitting in the classroom every day, 365. How are we as a community, as a board, investing in making sure our teachers are installing the best curriculum possible into our kids, not just the best structures around them?
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'll give a brief response from my perspective. This is what we do every single day. Teaching and learning is our bread and butter. That is what we do every day. Number one thing that we do is we hire the best teachers possible. We hire one star after another. Unfortunately, we have people like Mrs. Bean that have left us after a brilliant career of being a masterful teacher. When we have fabulous teachers, it's the number one most important thing that we do as a district. Thankful for everybody who's part of that. The curriculum is what we're supposed to teach. And a lot of that comes from the state. Mr. Satterfield back there is our new assistant superintendent for curriculum. That will be a major thing that he will be doing. We're constantly working on instructional practice, best practices so that our teachers have the best training possible, that they have the best tools possible, that they have everything that they need in order to maximize the use of time for students.
so just to kind of add on to
Yeah.
that, not to interrupt you.
No, please.
Involvement of all 32 kids. You know, what I've seen in my high school career
Yeah.
is you'd have 15 kids that loved what they were doing in that position.
Yeah.
What about the other 15 kids, 17 kids?
Sure.
How are we getting all 32 kids involved into the classroom and not sitting in a corner scrolling, per se, TikTok reels? You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying,
We're all
right?
at school to learn,
Yeah.
right? We're all looking to go to college, trades, start a business, have a profession after high school. And when we have kids sitting in classrooms and corners, not saying it's a teacher's fault, but how can we all together figure out a way to get everybody included in the class and put them in the right classes so that they're all studying to advance in their career path?
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point, and that's why we're constantly moving in a direction to try to improve as a district. But you're right, student engagement is huge, and purpose is really important, like students finding purpose in what they're learning inside the classroom, being engaged in it, that it's relatable to their future, on and on and on. Those are things that we have to do, not just in Brighton, but every single profession. And I think you're hitting on one of the most important things about education. How do we engage every student? How do we inspire every student? How do we help every student define their pathway, like yourself? So I'm not going to lie to you and say that we have it all figured out. It's a train that's moving. We're constantly working on it. We have 750 employees. We have a board of education. We have these industry experts. We're all working to try to deliver the best product we can. People from the past, that's what they did. Try to deliver for students. Everybody here trying to deliver for students. So it's a really important question, so I do appreciate it. I don't have a perfect response, but go right ahead.
Just have a quick question related to that. Earlier, we were talking about classroom investments. And I recall when we first started to go down the path of presenting the community with the special bond a few months back, we had gone through and toured some classrooms. And one of the classrooms that we had toured was the science lab that we had, appropriated funds for and invested to renovate with the new downdraft booths and things of that nature, all the new cabinets.
Yeah.
And if I remember right, I think that classroom was about close to $800,000, wasn't it, like 750, 750-ish? 750.
I think you're right. I think 556 sounds.
More like between 550 and 600.
$550,000 and $600,000. And when we had gone through there, the one kind of piece of feedback we received was that the classroom was unutilized because the teachers have a difficult time like transitioning from their method of teaching and the tools they use to teach to that new classroom. And so I guess a question I would just pose for the benefit of the public is if the public were to invest millions of dollars to renovate classrooms, is there a potential for that dynamic to exist where, with good intentions, the public says we should renovate classrooms, but the very teachers who then are in the classroom teaching and engaging students have a difficult time because of just how different it is from what they've been accustomed to? And this is Dean, if you'd like to share your thoughts, by all means.
Absolutely. I think number one is room C8 at the high school was a model classroom that was an experiment. We had a number of people that would sign it out, but you're correct, it's been underutilized. Mr. Evans is assigning a teacher there, so it will be used full-time going into next year. But that was a model that was supposed to help advise us on what is working well, what not, when it comes to this next investment. But you're 100% correct. Any investment that we make here, we need to maximize it for our students. It needs to bring maximum benefit for the students. So you're spot on with that assessment. So with that, I'm going to call us to a conclusion of this part of this. The board will be back here at 7. I want to give them a chance to get settled before our 7 o'clock meeting. I want to say thank you to everyone for being here. If you have additional questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Obviously, you'll have a chance to hear from the board here in just a few moments. But thank you all for being here. Any questions you have, don't hesitate to ask. Thank you.